Welcome back for another half hour of 12 News at 4. In a stunning reversal of a landmark case today, Harvey Weinstein's rape conviction was overturned in New York. The once powerful Hollywood movie producer was convicted of rape back in 2020 and stood as a symbol of the #MeToo movement. In a scathing 4-3 opinion, the New York Court of Appeals found that Weinstein's trial judge made improper rulings, including a decision to let women testify about allegations that were not part of the case. Weinstein was sentenced to 23 years in prison and has maintained his innocence, denying any non-consensual sexual activity. The Manhattan District Attorney's Office plans to retry the case. Let's take a legal deep dive into this case. Joining me once again is criminal defense attorney Hector Diaz. Did this ruling by the New York Court of Appeals surprise you at all?
It did, only because of the high-profile nature that this was a case that the New York District Attorney's Office spent a lot of time on.
Yeah.
And, you know, this higher court, the Court of Appeals, essentially said you made a mistake. There was a mistake in terms of presenting some of this character evidence, character witnesses that testified at the trial, and then, you know, the judge allowing it in.
Yeah.
And so it did surprise me in that regard. But now, you know, having the benefit of, you know, 20/20 vision here, looking at it, undoubtedly those prosecutors recognized Harvey Weinstein, very powerful figure at that time, probably some concern that he may walk on these charges. And so there was probably an effort there to really kind of overdo it with witnesses in terms of presenting maybe more than they needed to in terms of showing that this person was the, you know, type of person that would commit these kinds of sexual offenses.
Right. So because this was overturned and they do plan to retry the case, will the burden of proof be even harder this time around?
Well, you know, it's going to be interesting to see. Undoubtedly, the DA is going to say right now, we're bringing it. We're going to take this case. You know, the pressure is on them. You know, the legal cases in New York are mounting up right now.
Right.
And so but who knows how this is going to play out. This could be a situation where maybe Weinstein's lawyers come to the table and say, listen, he's already doing time in California. He's not going to get out.
Right.
And, you know, is this a deal to be had? I think that's going to be based on how much weight did the parties believe that those jurors gave to the character witnesses that testified. So it's going to be interesting. I think in the next couple months, maybe over the summer, we can see this back into the courtroom.
Yeah. All right. Let's move on now to another big historic national case, the first criminal trial of a former U.S. president. In the first of 4, this hush money trial goes back to March 2023, when former President Donald Trump was indicted in New York City on charges involving a scheme to bury allegations of extramarital affairs that arose during his first White House campaign in 2016. Today in court, Trump's attorney began cross-examination of the prosecution's first witness, the former publisher of the National Enquirer, who testified about the deal he helped broker with adult film star Stormy Daniels. Meanwhile, oral arguments ended at the Supreme Court on whether Trump should be immune from criminal charges for acts committed while in office. So now, the biggest questions left. What are the justices going to decide, and when will they decide it, as prosecutors are looking to get their cases tried before the November election? So, Hector, let's back up. First of all, for the criminal trial, what stands out to you?
Just some of the facts that were laid out by this former CEO of the National Enquirer, David Pecker, who really methodically laid out this, quote, catch and kill, close quote, kind of scheme where Trump, and not just Trump, but others in his kind of, you know, political world were really concerned about negative stories around, you know, that time around the 2016 election.
Right.
And so they, you know, I think the prosecutors did a nice job in methodically walking this person, David Pecker, who had a close relationship to Trump. This was somebody that, you know, former President Trump considered his friend, considered him to be his friend. And also they laid out how Michael Cohen, who is going to be in this trial, is going to be a central figure in this trial, Trump's fixer, had a lot of meetings with Mr. Pecker in terms of really kind of, you know, laying out certain stories and how they were going to silence and make sure that those stories didn't hit the media in benefit of Trump.
Right. So this is week 1.
Right.
When do you think that this is going to wrap up, and how do you think it's going to result?
It's going to take some time. There are a lot of witnesses. This is the state's first witness, and they're going to have to lay out more. anticipating that Trump's defense here is going to be, well, wait a minute, no, I wasn't trying to silence these stories for the campaign. This was for my, the embarrassment that I didn't want my family to suffer. And so they're going to be calling, other Trump officials that, worked during that time to testify in support of their case. It's going to take some time. Too soon to say how this is going to play out.
Okay. What about at the Supreme Court? How do you think that that's going to play out for Trump?
Those arguments today, I think, are Trump's lawyers were fighting for absolute immunity. This idea that a sitting president has absolute immunity. The Supreme Court pushed back pretty vigorously and said no. Right? No, in the arguments. But they left the door open, at least for the possibility of qualified immunity, that certain official acts could cover the president from being prosecuted. And so we'll see. I don't expect a decision until maybe middle to late summer. So it's
okay. So before the election.
I think so. I think that it's not lost on these justices the historic impact of this decision and what this means going forward for various parties and a lot of cases going on involving Trump.
Right, and the big implications afterwards that will follow. All right, Hector, you've been outstanding. Thank you so much for your deep dive analysis. We appreciate you.
Thank you for having me.